Hey everyone, so we've been on vacation and we just got back from church and we're back at the hotel room, and I'm really excited because I had some thoughts about the worship service this morning that I want to share. So we went to a church that was just nearby. For those that don't know, I'm a United Methodist. That's the denomination that I grew up in and that I do work with. In this case though, we actually went to a Baptist church. And there's nothing wrong with Baptist churches, I enjoy them. But we went because it happened to be the closest and most convenient church to us for where we were. And anyway, the sermon today was on Jesus walking on water. It's a verse that we know fairly well. You know, Jesus walks across the Sea of Galilee, and Peter sees him and freaks out and, goes on the water and starts to sink from his lack of faith. And normally what we hear in that verse is they talk about, is Peter's lack of faith that causes him to sink. Well, the pastor in this case took a different sort of spin on it, and it was not about the disciples' faith at all. It was about Jesus' display of his divinity in being able to control the elements and do something that is impossible, which is the walking on the water. And one of the things that stuck out during that verse was that the disciples were terrified. They were terrified to see this, what they didn't know was Jesus coming across the water, this entity coming across the water, and they were afraid. And then they realized it was Jesus, and Peter calls out. Anyway, but the word terrified struck me because it's these guys who are used to being on the sea and seeing these storms. They're already pretty tough guys. If you really think about it, being on the Sea of Galilee is a harsh world. Boats sink, it's not an easy life. And so these guys are probably not easily afraid, but they were terrified of what they saw. And so that word stuck in my head. What also happened at this service was an older gentleman got baptized. And that is a new thing for me. Growing up in the United Methodist Church, we tend to baptize babies. And we tend to do it with water on the forehead and things like that. It's a very cute, symbolic experience. But in other denominations like the Baptist Church, you wait until you are ready to be baptized, till you make the decision. So the decision's not made for you as an infant. You make the decision when you're ready to. And that can be as a child, as a teenager, or in this case, as an older adult. And so this gentleman had made the decision to be baptized. And what I gathered from, having some conversations and stuff is that this is a decision that, he made later in life, is to become a Christian, to start following Christ, and to become baptized. What I find is interesting as a guy is the idea of being baptized as an adult scares me. It makes me afraid. And I started thinking, why is that? Why would I be afraid of that? And I think it's because as guys, we tend to want to be in control. We tend to want to have everyone think that we have it all together. We want everyone to believe that we are capable of handling ourselves well, that we make good decisions. And in some cases, we just don't. And when you decide to become baptized, especially as an adult, what you're basically saying to the world, or at least to your congregation, is that being a Christian is somewhat new to you, and that you lived a life before that was probably not so great, or at least was not what we would consider, the Christian ideal. And so to admit that you didn't have your act together, to admit that you might have been wrong, to admit that you did some things that you're not proud of, to admit that you are a sinful person in front of a whole group of people, and basically asking for redemption, forgiveness, is a scary thing, And I just thought about how much fear this guy had to get over in order to do that. And I know that when you receive Christ, you have that sense of peace and joy and that excitement that you want to share. But to admit to everyone, especially as an older adult, this guy is probably late 60s, to admit in that age range that is where you are in life, that's a hard and scary thing. And I was just really proud of this gentleman for not only making the commitment to Christ, but also for getting over that fear that can hold a lot of guys back. There's a lot of guys I know that would want to do that, to be baptized, but they don't want to admit that they didn't have that relationship beforehand, or they don't want to go to the altar at the altar call because they don't want people to think that they're in need or that they've got a problem. And so I think as guys, we need to get over our own fear in the same way that Peter did. Peter got over his own fear and started to walk out on the water. Now, granted, he didn't have all the faith in the world, but we don't need to have all the faith in the world either. We just need to have the faith of a mustard seed to keep going and to do God's will. And so this guy got over his fear. He got baptized in front of a whole bunch of people. And it really set an example to me as a Christian man of there are times that I just got to get over myself, get over my own fears, because there's not a single person in that congregation that thought badly about him. Sitting in that congregation, I realized everybody there was excited for him. They were proud of him. They were cheering him on. They were welcoming him into their world, into their congregation, into the Christian family. There wasn't a single person that was judging him for that. They were all just excited. And what we have to do is get over our own hang-ups, because if we don't, we're not going to make that commitment and take those steps. And where's that going to leave us? And what kind of an example is that going to set for us as guys, especially with children? You know, what kind of example do we set for our children if we're too afraid to make these decisions in our own lives, to take those steps, to be the example, to go to the altar for the altar call, to raise your hand in church and admit that you are sinful, that you have, problems, that you're not perfect. We like to think we're perfect, and we know we're not. So anyway, I just was really proud of this guy. It was an interesting way to experience Sunday worship on vacation, and I got a lot out of it, not really because of the sermon, but because of the experience I had watching this older gentleman get baptized, because it was a new experience for me, but it made me really realize the fear hang-ups that as guys that we have, especially as it relates to church. So anyway, I hope that you found this helpful. If you'd like to see more, hit that subscribe button and click the like button. And if you have an interesting experience related to fear and how you got over it, I'd love to hear it in the comments, so put that down. So anyway, we'll see you next time. God bless.